All right, the Prime Minister delivered an even stiffer rebuke of India today. At the foreign interference inquiry, Justin Trudeau said India made a horrific mistake by thinking it could interfere with Canada's sovereignty.
It seems like folks within the Indian government have decided to create violence and unlawfulness in Canada as a way of demonstrating the point that they are trying to make, that there is violence and unlawfulness in Canada. And I think that is exceptionally egregious.
Canada expelled 6 Indian diplomats the RCMP says are persons of interest in a series of violent crimes across Canada. But CBC spoke to sources close to the investigation into India, and they say the network supporting this alleged activity in Canada is largely still in place. So with alleged threats to Canadian Sikhs still looming, how are Sikh communities coping? Brampton, Ontario is home to Canada's largest Sikh population, and Gurpartap Singh Toor is a regional councillor in Brampton, and he joins me now. Mr. Toor, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me tonight, David.
The RCMP says it took this extraordinary step on Monday of making these accusations public because of the threat to public safety. Given that, what sense do you have about how Sikhs in your community are reacting to these allegations?
I'm seeing two kind of reactions here in the community. One is a vindication, where the community feels like they've been talking about this as an issue for decades. The issue of the government of India, through its agents, interfering in whether it's Canadian politics or the lives of Sikh Canadians. But then there is also a sense of worry that exists in the community here that this has now proven right by RCMP and by the statements given by the Prime Minister that government of India in fact was involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and has been involved in other incidents and activities that have been going on for the last year and a bit.
What specific cases have you heard in Brampton where people are saying they've been threatened or pressured, possibly in connection with India? Because we have heard this spike in extortion cases in particular in that part of Ontario.
Over the past year, we have seen a really sharp spike in extortion incidents, shootings at people's businesses being set on fire, shootings at people's residences, people being targeted. And when these people come forward and complain to the police, there's a common theme amongst all of them, in fact, that all these extortion calls come from one particular gang in India whose leader is right now in the federal prison in India. And sometimes these claims are being made that they're acting on behalf of the government of India. We have seen that rise in violence here locally in Brampton, but across the country, and the target seems to be Sikh Canadians.
Right, and this is the Bishnoi gang that you're talking about, right, which has been linked to all of this. Certainly there were connections there in the people who were arrested in the Nijjar murder in Surrey. So a question, though, and I'm in no way trying to diminish this with this question, but how do we know this is not just criminal activity as opposed to politically motivated criminal activity? Do you know what I mean? It's not just gangs acting like gangs as opposed to an agent of a foreign state.
That's I believe that that's exactly what the government of India here is trying to do, that muddy the waters with gang activity and then killings that are being happened at the orders of the government. When you have a gang leader that is currently in federal prison with unlimited access to data of Sikh Canadians, whereby he is using his cell phone to call people, video calls, there's messages posted on social media, and being directly in contact with Canadians here in Canada, that can't be done without some form of the government of India looking the other way. And then you have gang members that have targeted killings of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, was very vocal. He's a Sikh leader across Canada, and his unfortunate death that has happened last year has been linked to the same gang. So when we look at these activities, it is, I would say it is fair for the Canadian community here to be suspicious that, the government of India is trying to muddy the waters. Let's paint this as gang activity, criminal gang activity that's occurring, but at the same time, let's get rid of the targets that we have on a certain list.
It was one of the things that really struck me, sir, was that on Monday, the politicians and the police all made the point that even after the Prime Minister made the allegation in Parliament last September, and even after the police made the arrests in the Nijjar murder in May, that the violence just kept increasing and escalating. What have you seen in Brampton?
That seems to be the case, that there has not been an end to this violence. RCMP has come out and said there's a vast network of operatives working on ground here in Canada. We have had some of this indication from our Peel Police as well, who has been working with RCMP and CSIS on these investigations. There has been local community members that have been contacted directly by either by CSIS or by RCMP that there is a threat to their life or somebody they may know, or just for the purpose of the completeness of the investigation to get more answers. But we're definitely not seeing an end to this. But at the same point, I would say that the community is glad that this is being acknowledged very publicly now by the RCMP, hoping that this encourages more community members to come forward, speak with the authorities, knowing that the Government of Canada, RCMP, CSIS, are looking at the safety of Canadians and putting that as their primary interest.
India, of course, has flatly denied this and said it's a politically motivated, trumped-up allegation by a prime minister who's in trouble. But they do also criticize Canada for harboring what they call Khalistani extremists and Khalistani terrorists, people who support an independent Sikh state. How do you respond to the allegations that extremism is a problem here?
See, the key word here is that this is an allegation from the government of India. Any person that speaks up against the government on its treatment of its minorities and what they call the world's largest democracy, calling people that speak out against this as extremists or terrorists, or linking them to terrorist organizations, that is an outlandish claim here. Here in Canada, we practice our rights and freedoms. Anybody is free to speak their mind, and whether that is political in nature. There are members of the Sikh community that very proudly speak about a Sikh separate state, talk about Khalistan. That is seen in community meetings, it is seen at Sikh parades. The community is very public and vocal about that opinion. But regardless of that, it doesn't give the right to any foreign government to target Canadian citizens on Canadian soil and taking away their life, attacking their businesses, their livelihood, just so that they can suppress that voice. I think Canada is a model where you can practice your rights and freedoms, and maybe India as a democratic nation, what Canada has for long considered an ally, needs to stand on those principles as well.
Canada has expelled 6 diplomats from the country, and this was described as a move to disrupt the operation that is alleged to be operating in Canada. But we've had some reporting from police sources that there's still a network out there. A lot of people who may try to get out of the country now that the revelations are there. But I wonder how safe people feel in the Sikh community, particularly those who would be pro-Khalistan, who want a separate independent Sikh state, that this disruption has happened. Does it make them feel safer, or are they still feeling pretty vulnerable?
Canadians definitely feel that sense of vulnerability when, if you're outspoken, if you come out in the public and state your views. In Canada, generally, you have been safe. But then that was not the case last year with the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. But again, the Sikh community does feel much safer being in a place like Canada, being in this country where you look at the RCMP, investigate this independently and come out with these statements, where you see the Prime Minister come out and speak as the Prime Minister of the country, not as the leader of a party. Canadians are affording that that choice, that their rights and freedoms are being respected here in Canada. Definitely not the same case in India.
Gurpartap Singh Toor, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your time, sir. As Regional Councillor in Brampton, Ontario.